All right, we're here with Alex Brightman, who is a multi-talented actor and singer and
Multi-talented.
yeah.
If we're being technical, yeah.
Why don't you give us a little background on when you decided you first wanted to become an actor and talk about your journey from that first initial dream to right now.
First initial dream, first memory I can have of wanting to be an actor was my grandparents live outside of New York City in Jersey, and we would come out once, twice a year to see a show. And the first time we saw a show, I had no clue what it was. I had no clue that that was a job, that was a thing. I had seen movies, I knew what plays were, but I hadn't seen it in such grand fashion. And the first show I saw was Cats, and I hated it immediately. And it was one of the worst experiences of my life. And I begged my parents to never take me to something like that ever again. I don't want to even be close to it. Oh my goodness, I can't handle it, please. And the next night they took me to see The Who's Tommy. And I went into the theater kicking and screaming, thinking it was going to be like that. And I left the theater saying, that is exactly what I want to do with the rest of my life. I didn't know there was a place that existed that was like hallowed ground for stuff that I wanted to do. Because before then I was just dancing on my fireplace in my house to Gloria Estefan and like Billy Ocean, and my parents were like, I hope this turns into something other than just this.
Right.
It can't be just this. And when I was old enough, which was about 8, my mom found a community theater in San Jose, California, where I'm from, and I played Tiny Tim in A Christmas Carol. And from then on, at the same theater for up until high school, we did that theater, community theater, where everyone got cast. Probably upwards of like 50 shows, I think, and all sort of things that I would never play. But that's the beauty of community theater. And then come high school, I did plays at high school. Started to think about college, and sort of through process of elimination, didn't have many other things in my skill set. I didn't have math. I failed math a million times, and I loved reading, but I didn't want to teach, and I loved science, but I didn't care to learn any more than I already knew. So I wanted to, act, and I made the decision to go to NYU. I didn't make the decision; they made the decision that I got into NYU, and I got into the Cap 21 program, and liked it, but sort of it didn't meet my expectations to what I thought it was going to be, and after about 2 years, I sort of realized that I wasn't right for school, which is something I think is very important to realize, and not everybody is. Most people are. I think there are a special little breed that kind of doesn't learn from that, doesn't learn from the school environment. So I left, and thankfully I left to do a show, my first equity gig, which was The History Boys in Los Angeles at the Amundsen Theater. I had to get my equity card to do it, so I didn't see any problem, and I had a blast. I learned more doing that than any school I'd ever done. For the working with the National Theater and all that.
Right.
Coming back to New York, I debated going back to school, but it just wasn't in the cards. I tried to force myself to think maybe school would be right, and just in time I booked a little show called Glory Days.
That little show, huh?
Yeah, that extremely little show. Yeah, great show. Great show, great music, great book. Brilliantly for this generation, for my generation, really spoke to who I was, and so I was lucky enough to be in the Broadway cast. And lucky enough to do the 3 weeks of rehearsal and performances, and then we closed, and it was really surreal. But that surreal gig didn't go down quietly. Everyone heard about it. Everyone heard who we were, and luckily, a couple months after that, I got in the room and was at Telsey and was auditioning for Wicked, and sort of learned how to audition because I had to audition for that show 11 times in a row. And sort of became this game of how do I audition differently if it's the same material? How do I keep it fresh? How do I keep these people to like me and not feel stale? And so that's where I sort of use what I like to call my audition. My audition technique is a shoulder-lowering experience. It's what I teach, it's what I do. Walk in the room and make people go, oh, okay. Whatever he's going to do in this room, no matter what it is, at least he's in control. We may not like him, we may like him, but whatever it is, at least we like the guy coming into the room. And luckily I booked it, and I was happy, and it was a long-running show, the best consolation prize I could ever get for doing Glory Days,
right.
Which ran one night. I did that show for 2 years. skip ahead 2 years, I left the show to do more regional stuff. I wanted to do stuff that I could sort of say yes and no to. And I was all over the place. I went to San Diego, Utah, Philly, DC, and then I started to miss it, and this is kind of bringing up to speed of where I am now. And just in time for me to miss, being back in New York and back in my apartment and doing something brand new, I very, very fortunately auditioned, called back, and then booked the upcoming Broadway company of Big Fish. And it's going to be insane. It's going to be humongous. And I'm being directed by Susan Stroman, which is, if I could tell my 10-year-old self that that's going to happen, I wouldn't believe myself.
Right.
I would tell myself, first of all, who are you? Nice to meet you. You don't look as good as I thought you were going to look. And then, what? We're doing a Susan Stroman show? Yeah, that's amazing.
Did being in a show like Glory Days and having what happened to you change your way of thinking towards how you would pursue certain things? Did it jade you in any way, or did it actually make you want to pursue your craft even further? Because the show obviously was something that you believed in.
Oh yeah, and I'll answer one of those questions very specifically. Is that I'm never jaded. Mm-hmm. I will never be jaded because of the experiences I have had since I was 10. Was so lucky back then, and I feel like you make your own luck too. But I really do. You have to be in the right place at the right time. But then you also have to deliver. Mm-hmm. You can't just base your whole career on luck. But I have been so fortunate to be in those positions and put myself there and know the people to put me there that there is no possible way that I'm allowed to be jaded. I will never allow myself to be. I'm so thankful every day I wake up and I'm in a show, I pinch myself and I'm like, this can't still be real. I can't still be getting paid for this. It's so silly. But no, Glory Days, what taught me, we did a couple of preview performances.
Right.
But the very short run of Glory Days taught me something very new about the business, which is that can happen. And I had never experienced it in that fashion. I don't think a lot of people have. But that this business is the most fulfilling job in the world, but it is also at the same time equally finite. It is never guaranteed. You can't get a degree that says I'm an actor and then you go and apply for a job and you go, I'm an actor.
Right.
You can do that as a doctor. You go, I'm a doctor now. See? But an actor, you can't just say, see, I have a piece of paper. You have to really deliver all the time. And that show, and then when you succeed, it means you get a job. Then you can relax and sort of like have fun in a show. And that taught me that it can never be that way. You can't go, oh, I finally did this now. There are some exceptions. Wicked will never close, ever. So if you're in that job, then God bless. But it's crazy, and who knows? Any show, Big Fish, a multi-million-dollar show, could close tomorrow. It could lose everything. Everyone saw that thing that happened with Rebecca, and it's just there are people in the world that are not good for this business, like shitty producers, who steal money and ruin productions. But it keeps me on my toes.
And maybe jaded was the wrong word. I meant prepare you for things that may come up.
Sure. I have a core, this will double back, but I have a core in improv from a long time ago. I did improv comedy for a very long time. And so having different things thrown at me has never really fazed me. I don't take them on as surprises. I take them on as like, oh, okay, that's new. And now I know that for next time. It's never I never lose my balance as far as that goes. But I certainly try to, learn and sponge everything that I can possibly learn from experiences. That's what a good improv actor will do anyway. But as far as the business goes, I love having an agent because they deal with a lot of the business aspect of show business, and I can sort of handle the show part. When it becomes me having to deal with the business part, I get a little sad because it's not what I'm there for. And I don't think it doesn't feel like work. And when it starts to feel like work, then you're in the wrong area. In any job, I think, but acting especially, you feel like you're going down to a coal mine to do mine for coal, and you're in the wrong place. You have to leave.
Absolutely. Why don't you talk a little bit about the show 35 Millimeter, which featured a humongous amount of talent.
Insane. And I still, that's one of those 35 Millimeter is one of those experiences where I pinched myself every minute of that experience because having not been trained or anything like that, I didn't feel qualified. to be with such insane talent who I have looked up to since the minute I met them. Jay Johnson, Lindsay Mendez, Betsy Wolfe, and Crawford, who is in Big Fish, and we're playing brothers, and it's insane to think about that. But and excluding them for a second, just to know Ryan's music, Ryan Scott Oliver, is one thing. He's an animal. He is the most creative human being I've met in a decade, as far as musical theater goes. But also just to know him and to have collaborated on stuff with him, and to be asked back, and to be liked by him, and to just be able to be called his friend, and that I can call him back his friend, is a blessing. I mean, as for any actor that's in musical theater, it is a godsend. It's one of those things that he's a shooting star. And I'm using a lot of metaphor, but it's really true. It's how I feel, and I so rarely get to gush, so I'm glad that I get to kind of gush a little bit about it. 35 millimeter is a brand new piece of theater. They took something, everyone says it's all been done, but everyone who said that should have seen 35 millimeter, because it took the book out of a musical and replaced it with pictures. I mean, that's never been done. And it was so poignant and beautiful, and it didn't have a through line, nor did it need one. And it was just you could take from it whatever you wanted, but mostly it was about art, creating art, begatting art, creating art, having an art baby, and then throwing the baby against a wall and creating a baby splatter. You know what I mean? It was such a great experience, and it combines a lot of the stuff that I love. Yeah.
You obviously have a fantastic attitude about what you do.
Yeah.
Does that help in terms of keeping you pushing forward? You seem very excited to be doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
You're very passionate about who you work with.
Yeah.
Does your positivity carry you further? You also seem like somebody who doesn't take not yourself seriously, but it doesn't seem like...
It's true too. I don't take myself very seriously.
But it doesn't seem like you measure your insane talent as up to par as people you work with, and I think that's an unfair assessment.
Well, okay. Well, thanks. And I don't think I'm untalented. And I certainly, have the resume to sort of back it up if I ever get questioned upon it. But there are different kinds of talent. We're all, as they say, snowflakes in this business, and we all have something to offer. I don't like when people say, "Oh yeah, I go in all the time. We're me and those five guys, we're the same type." And it's like, yeah, I see what they mean, but everybody is so different.
Right.
You cannot compare things like this. So, and I think it's such a cool business to sort of watch people do what they do best. And that's I don't believe I get paid for that every day. That's something that's it's like a master class every day. It's free class. But positivity in this business is key. I think that there's no room for negativity. I think there's plenty of room for, exasperation, and I think there's plenty of room for doubt. I think there's plenty of room for confusion. But I don't think any of that should be negative necessarily. I think a lot of those problems are things to work towards something rather than go, oh, I don't know how to do this dance step, and then turn it into something negative. It's I don't know how to do this dance step yet, because I'm not a dancer and I'm in a Susan Stroman show, so I'm living proof that you can do something. You can turn a negative into a positive.
Right.
That rather than going, oh, I have to do a dance call. Well, that's it. Or go, you know what? I'm not a dancer, but I'm not gonna let her look at my feet. I'm gonna make her look at all this. So maybe she'll cast me on that. And she did. So yeah, positivity is. And I haven't always had positivity about. Sorry, let me rephrase that. I have always had positivity about the business, whatever the business is. But I've always had positivity about what I do on stage. I could be negative in so many other situations, but I'm a strict believer in leaving your baggage at the door. Strict. And when I take breaks, I'm breaking. So I'm regimented, but the positivity, you have to be positive in rehearsals. It doesn't behoove anybody. It can really slow things down. Yeah.
And most of the time during these interviews, I ask for advice, but you, throughout this interview, have peppered your answers with advice. So I would like you to talk about, I know you have your show upcoming, but what other things do you do just on the side to keep yourself going in terms of creative things? I know that you also, do other performances and talk about some of your other interests.
A lot of my interests beyond theater sort of always have a little hook in the theater scene, except for cooking. I love cooking. And I actually have a cooking show on YouTube that is not currently updated, but it's on there. that I wrote with my girlfriend, Lindsay Kyler, and it's called An Actor Prepares, kind of a play on the Stanislavski book. And it's a hilarious, it's really tongue-in-cheek kind of cooking show, and we wrote it, created it with our friends, and put it up just because we were bored and wanted to do something. We had nothing to do, and we wanted something to do. But recently, I've taken up writing, and every actor's a writer, whether they admit it or not. Everyone has a file somewhere that has awful, awful things that they've written that never will see the light of day, and I am so in that group until recently that I wrote a musical. I wrote a book to a musical with my friend Drew Gasparini, who is, about to be world famous for everything he's ever done. And we wrote a musical called Make Me Bad in 3 months. And then 3 months later, we had it put up at Pace University. It was brilliant. I'd never been on that side of the table before in that fashion. And it's kind of amazing what unemployment can do, can produce, because we wrote a musical, and it's there, and it's moving forward, and we continue to work on it, and we've started 2 more. So I don't like to not be busy. I really, really don't know what to do with downtime. I'm good on vacation. If I plan a vacation, I'm there. I'm good with taking a break if I plan it. And I'm bad with downtime.
What was that like, being on the other end of it and seeing what the people on the other side of that table see when they're watching you?
Yeah, being on the other side of a table as a writer, when your material is being performed, and also on a more general level at stake, kind of, is more nerve-wracking than any of the shows I've ever performed in. Because you wrote it, it's something that you care about, obviously. You didn't write it for money, I wrote it for free. And you want it so badly to sound good, and in your head it sounds incredible, because you wrote it. But then you get behind a table and you just start to doubt yourself and bite your nails, and thankfully it sounded fine, but everyone who's ever performed my material now has only made it better. So it became really gratifying to sort of put something out there. Because at the very least, it can only get better. It can't get worse. If you have a lot of people going, this didn't really feel right, or that didn't work, but that really worked. And all of a sudden you start to chisel away at something, and you realize that keeping something to yourself in this business is not helpful. It's all a collaborative business. And so that was the biggest thing I learned, and I had to let go of the nervousness immediately. I had never felt those kind of nerves for years. And it wasn't a fun reminder of what that feels like. Everyone gets nervous, but that was like nightmare kind of nervous, because it's just not what I'm used to. It took me way out of my comfort zone.
Well, you said the magic word in terms of actors, and that is collaboration. And anybody who's watching this video would be lucky to collaborate with you. And
oh my God,
we really appreciate you taking the time to do this.
Thank you
so much.
My pleasure, always.